Hello, welcome to Recovery Demystified, a show where we explore our relationship to substances from a radical, non-religious, and empowering lens. Our sobriety is not a purity contract. It is an invitation to become curious about ourselves and find our own unique paths to growth and healing. If you've been questioning the role of alcohol or drugs in your life and haven't found the resources that you need, you're in the right place. Let's get started. Hello. Welcome to Recovery Demystified. My name's Early. I'm so happy to have y'all here today. I'm so excited to share another resources episode with y'all. And I guess just a little bit about me for the newer listeners, which a warm welcome to all of our new listeners. I'm so happy to have y'all here. I was quitting drinking and drugs for 13 years and I couldn't find the resources that I needed to heal. I went to 12-step meetings. I did the whole 12 steps and I felt like shit the whole time. And so I ended up sort of like cobbling together my own path to recovery. And I know I'm not the only person that needs something different than what's available out there. So I'm really excited to share the work that I've done and the methods that I've come up with people to bring a sense of empowerment to our lives and create a life that we don't need to escape from. So this episode is a part of that. And as always, if this work is helpful to you, go ahead and hit that subscribe button so you never miss an episode. It would be really helpful for me if you would just take a moment to hit the 5-star button. And if you have a little bit longer, maybe leave us a review. All of that stuff helps the podcast reach more listeners. And if you believe in this work, if it's helping you at all, and if you have the ability, we can help keep this program completely free and ad-free by having folks contribute via the Patreon. So there's a link to the Patreon in the description. There's also a link to donate in any amount via our website, and we are a 501c3 nonprofit. So it's all tax deductible, and your donations will help continue to keep this work free and available to all people. Anyway, back to the show. Our recovery is a process. It is us going out there and trying a bunch of new stuff and seeing how it makes us feel. I love to tell people, imagine that you are a scientist and the test subject both at once in your own life, and you're just constantly on a data gathering mission about yourself. And it's not about someone else telling you what you need. It's about you going out there and trying new things and saying, how does this make me feel? And is this working for me? And all of that is your scientific data to build yourself your own empowering, unique path to recovery. And I'm really excited to share some stuff with y'all today. I love the statistic that 75% of people recover from their addictions. And I'll link that study in the show notes. I think there's a lot of bad data out there. I feel like I hear 10% all the time. I hear really bad numbers, but it's a really good study. Check it out in the show notes. And if you're struggling today, if you're going through ups and downs, if you're like, man, I fucking tried everything, nothing works, I feel like shit, I hate myself, or if you're just in the struggle with your addiction, just know that that's normal. And if you're out here trying and listening to a recovery podcast and you're trying to do different things, I think that puts you squarely in that 75% of people who recover. And there's going to be ups and downs on the process, but, trust yourself and you're going to get there. I believe in you. I know you can do it. I personally think 100% of people have the ability to recover. We just need to be able to provide folks with better, more diverse resources that can adapt to our unique needs. And I've got a doozy of a coping skill for y'all today. This is the absolute most helpful thing that no one talks about in addiction recovery, and it is learning how to tolerate discomfort. I heard a lot when I was doing 12-step stuff to avoid people, places, and things, which is, I think it can be good advice depending on your resilience level, but at Recovery Demystified, I think that basically once we have developed our skills and have this ability to be uncomfortable and survive and be confident in ourselves and trust ourselves, we can go with strength into any situation and live by our own ethics and our own morals and not be swayed by outside forces or our own internal landscape because we've practiced learning how to be uncomfortable. And this is illustrated really well by actually our last social gathering. We do a mocktail hour at the local bar. There's a great bar here in town called Sidecar Cocktail Lounge, and they have an extensive and delicious mocktail menu in addition to all of the normal alcohol drinks. And we post up on the patio there, and there's like 20 people. And in like 12-step programs or something, they would definitely not advise you to go hang out with your friends at the bar. And definitely hanging out at the bar is not for everyone. But I'm a firm believer that in recovery, you belong everywhere that you go. And your strength is in yourself and your strength is in your community. So we posted up with 20 people drinking mocktails, playing Scrabble, and just hanging out and listening to Afro Man's famous album at the bar. And yeah, it's about learning how to be confident in yourself in uncomfortable situations. And in my experience, and what I've observed in a lot of other people that have addictions, is that when we use substances, it is in an effort to avoid any sort of uncomfortable feelings or emotions. And the more that we teach our brains that we are going to numb and avoid and suppress uncomfortable or difficult emotions, the more it's going to go towards that coping skill in the future until eventually we drink or use drugs in response to anything. And uncomfortable emotions, I mean, that can be like a whole huge range of things. And I'm just pulling from a list in the book Nonviolent Communication by Marshall Rosenberg of feelings when needs are not fulfilled. And we've got on there sad, overwhelmed, nervous, lonely, impatient, frustrated, irritated, embarrassed, discouraged, disappointed, angry, confused, annoyed. And in my experience, those are a lot of reasons why we reach for a substance. It's like we're experiencing something that is causing a difficult emotion inside of us, and it's something that we've never learned how to tolerate. And what we have learned is effective in the short term is using a substance to make that difficult feeling go away. And when I talk about learning how to tolerate discomfort, I like to use this bullseye illustration. And maybe I'll put it in the thumbnail or in the show notes or something. But basically in the center of the bullseye is our comfort zone or our safe zone. And that's where we live with our addiction. That's where we're always trying to like suppress our discomfort to get back into that comfort zone. And then when we get a little bit outside of our comfort zone and we survive there, that is the growth zone. And that's a second tier of the bullseye. And then when we get too far outside of our comfort zone, we go past the growth zone and we get into the panic zone. And in the panic zone, that's when our nervous system is activated. We're in fight or flight mode. Maybe we're sweaty, maybe our heart's racing, or other symptoms of being in fight or flight with that sympathetic nervous system activation. And we don't grow or heal in the comfort zone. We don't grow or heal in the panic zone. So that sweet spot is when we're experiencing a challenging level of discomfort, but a survivable level of discomfort. And there's a number of ways to exist in the growth zone and survive and become stronger. And this is not to say that it's like advisable to be uncomfortable all of the time. But as we learn how to incrementally experience slight discomfort, our brain and our body learns that we're not always in danger when we're uncomfortable and that we can survive without using substances to suppress the challenging emotions that come along with being uncomfortable. And so we can progressively become more and more and more uncomfortable until, for instance, you can go to the bar with your friends and have no discomfort, no triggers at all, and just be hanging out drinking juice. You know what I mean? And even further than that, we can go past situations that previously would have triggered us, and we can imagine the absolute most horrible thing that could ever possibly happen in your life. And that level of discomfort will no longer trigger us to want to use a substance because we've practiced being uncomfortable for so long that tolerating discomfort is our new superpower. And I'm saying this from experience. In the past several years in my recovery, I have seen quite horrifying things that I don't want to traumatize y'all with by describing it to you. But yeah, like a couple of years ago, one of my friends died, and I was very, very, very close to the death experience, and that was worse than any horror movie that you could ever imagine. And I survived through the whole experience without even considering drinking. And then recently I had to euthanize my dog that I've had for 12 years. She was dying of cancer. And that is the worst imaginable possible thing I could think of happening in my life. And I was really present for it. And I wasn't triggered to drink or use because I've been practicing tolerating discomfort in healthy ways for so long. So instead of running and being fearful of things like triggers in our life, we can learn bit by bit to be comfortable with discomfort. And that is our new superpower. And the thing about life is that we are always going to experience uncomfortable situations. It is impossible to live a life as a human being on planet Earth and not experience varying levels of discomfort every single day. So it's not like you have to go out and try to make yourself be uncomfortable. Life is going to give you uncomfortable situations, such as, being caught in a traffic jam is uncomfortable, or being hungry. Being so hungry that you're angry is uncomfortable. Things are going to happen every single day. And those are your opportunities that the universe is giving you to practice your new skill of learning how to be uncomfortable. And there's several skills that I suggest or that I invite people to try when learning how to tolerate discomfort. And one is just setting yourself up for success in the first place. Like I said, uncomfortable situations are unavoidable and they're going to happen every day for the rest of our life. It's just the nature of being alive. However, we can reduce the amount of uncomfortable things that happen just by setting ourselves up for success in our lives. And this is based on our own choices of how we orient ourselves. And I definitely invite people as a strong baseline to think about and prioritize your basic human needs. Think about and prioritize your sleep. Like, what can I do to foster healthy sleep hygiene? Because that is going to increase your resilience in uncomfortable situations at a baseline level. Sleep is the most important thing we can do as human beings. It is just, there are so many benefits of sleep, like it could be its entire episode. But I invite people to ask ourselves, like, how can I focus and prioritize getting better sleep in my life? And then other basic human needs like drinking water and being hydrated and eating, like as healthy a food as it makes sense to eat, and just working on taking care of ourselves at a baseline level, because all of these things are going to increase our resilience just from the get. Earlier, I was talking about like being so hungry that you're angry. And I think that's a pretty universal human experience, being hangry. So if you can imagine being in a challenging situation while you're hangry, you're setting yourself up for failure, right? Because you're just going to be irritated, you're going to be on edge, and you're not going to be able to act in your own best interest if you haven't shown up with self-care in mind. So if we can do things like remember to stay hydrated and remember to treat our bodies well with nourishing food, then those things are going to set us up for success when we do experience uncomfortable situations. And within those basic human needs, I also like to stress finding a balance between movement and rest. Sometimes we're so our bodies are so tight from not moving all day. If it's a person that has maybe a desk job, or someone that is just spending a lot of extra time in bed, or any number of reasons, our bodies can get really tight and our emotions are stored in the bodies. And when we aren't able to release them with movement, then they can bog us down and create extra tension and stress that it's going to make us less resilient, and it's going to make it more difficult to tolerate discomfort. And then there's the flip side of that, where sometimes people are physically overworked, like maybe you're a go person that doesn't allow yourself to take breaks to rest. And for those type of people, it would be important to learn and prioritize resting the body to make sure that you're not so worn out that when you're presented with uncomfortable situations that you're going to be able to still have the resilience to act in your best interest. So that's focusing on sleep, focusing on hydration and eating nourishing food, and then trying to prioritize having a balance between rest and movement. And also keeping in mind that none of this is about purity. It's about treating yourself well and treating yourself with dignity and respect and love. And then also forgiving yourself for not being perfect, because no one is going to wake up in recovery one day and have all of a sudden, have this perfect, healthy diet and be completely hydrated all the time and have a great exercise routine and a perfect sleep schedule. That stuff, we're not looking to be pure. We're looking to treat ourselves well and treat ourselves with love and respect, and treat our body and our mind with keeping self-love as a priority. And then when we're able to take care of our basic needs, once we meet an uncomfortable situation, we're going to be able to tolerate that much better than if we were low on sleep, or if we were thirsty or hungry or completely worn out from stressing too much movement in our bodies. So I think setting ourselves up for success is going to be the best way to learn how to tolerate being uncomfortable. And then the other two most important things for tolerating discomfort are emotional literacy and nervous system regulation. So emotional literacy, somebody give me my soapbox. I get so annoyed. So I was in my 30s with my therapist, learning what emotions feel like in the body. And I remember getting all wound up and being like, why in the hell don't we learn this kind of shit in public schools? And why do most grown adults not understand their own feelings? And why am I in the therapist office at the age of 30 or whatever it was, learning how my emotions feel? It made me so upset. But it's a really important skill, which is also why at the end of our support group every week, we try to state what emotion we're feeling at that time. Because like I said, when we're in our addiction, we're using substances to suppress any and all emotions. So we don't learn what they are, and we don't learn how to tolerate them. And the first step to emotional tolerance is literally learning the word for what we're feeling. And that's why we have a feelings wheel, which is important, because there's a lot. I mean, there's not just like happy, sad, and mad. There's a million billion different ways that we can feel as humans, and learning that vocabulary and learning what the words are to explain the emotion that we're feeling is the first thing that's going to dampen the intensity of it. Just naming the emotion and looking at it and saying, I am feeling frustrated. I am feeling grief. I am feeling shame. And saying the words and naming the emotion, that immediately is going to dampen down the intensity of it and allow us to tolerate the discomfort of the unwanted emotions. And something else that we don't get taught is that emotions are all important, and they're all messengers, and they tell us that something is or isn't in alignment in our lives. And even the difficult emotions, although they're very hard to tolerate at times, the difficult emotions are there to tell us something. The guilt is there to tell us that we haven't acted in alignment with our morals. The grief is there to tell us that we've lost something important to us. The frustration is there to tell us that we need to act to correct something to be more in alignment. So naming the emotion and then also greeting it with respect, because the emotion isn't there just to make you feel bad. The emotion is there to tell you something is not in alignment and that it's time to take an action to make a change. So with emotional literacy, first, we learn what the names of the feelings are, and we state them when we have it, right? So let's just go with frustration. So say, I'm feeling frustrated is the first step to that. And then the next step to that is accepting it and being like, okay, I'm not fighting this. I'm understanding and accepting that I'm feeling frustrated right now. And even though I don't like it, I accept it. And then we do a bit of investigation, like, where is this frustration coming from? Why am I experiencing this emotion? And how does it feel in my body? Do I have a tight chest? Is my face feeling red? Am I clenching fists in my hands? Like where is the frustration manifesting in my body? And can I begin to relax these muscles and be in tune with my body to facilitate the movement and processing of this emotion? And then after that, we just sort of let it flow, and we nurture ourselves, and we practice self-compassion and self-love, and we observe the emotion and allow it to take its path until it's done and leaves our lives. And sometimes that emotion is going to prompt us to take an action, and sometimes it's just a feeling that needs to work its way through us. A lot of times when we get into recovery, there's a multitude of suppressed emotions, stuff that we stuffed down with substances, and it's going to come up. Suppressed emotions don't go anywhere, and they come back at inopportune times. And if you're having a really strong emotion that doesn't make any sense in conjunction with what is going on in your life, then perhaps it's a suppressed emotion that's coming up, and we go through the same process. Like, I'm experiencing grief, and it feels like a heaviness in my body. It feels like a cold heaviness. And I accept that I'm having this feeling of grief, and I'm not going to fight it, and I'm just going to watch it until it passes. So emotional literacy is going to be so important when we're learning how to tolerate discomfort. And you're going to have an emotion all the time. It's the nature of being human. So you get a million opportunities every day to practice emotional tolerance, and it gets easier over time. So try not to beat yourself up if it's really fucking hard at first. I mean, once in a while, I still also forget to do my emotional regulation, and I get swept up in the intensity of emotions too. So that's also a normal part of the human experience, but it does get easier over time. We just have to remember to practice. And then the other thing that's really important with learning how to tolerate discomfort is nervous system regulation. And basically we have two parts of our nervous system, the sympathetic, which is our fight or flight, and then the parasympathetic, which is the rest and digest. And like I was talking about earlier with the bullseye, when we get pushed out of that growth zone and we get into the panic zone, that is when we need to employ our nervous system regulation techniques. And this can be so many different things for so many people. And I definitely invite people to try a million different things. Try them several times in a bunch of different situations and see what works for you. And the key to the nervous system regulation techniques is learn how to practice them before you're freaking out, because it's really hard. I would almost say impossible to learn something when we're freaking out. So these are going to be things like box breathing or other different controlled breathing techniques. There is so much research and data and also historical tradition through things like Buddhism and yoga and meditation that using our controlled breathing in certain ways can physically stimulate the vagus nerve and allow us to put our own body into a state of relaxation. So looking up some of those guided meditation videos on YouTube, I really love alternate nostril breathing for nervous system regulation. Box breathing is great. Just elonged exhales, belly breathing, diaphragmatic breathing, anything like that are going to be great skills that can physically switch your body out of fight or flight mode and back into rest and digest, but you've got to practice them so much that they're really, really familiar to you, because once you're freaking out, it's going to be hard to remember how to do something unless you're very well practiced at it. There are other physical grounding techniques, things like the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, where you name 5 things you can see, 4 things you can hear, 3 things you can touch, 2 things you can smell, and 1 thing you can taste. And that is another method of bringing yourself out of the thinking mind and bringing yourself back into the physical world. So using your senses in this way for long enough that it can bring you out of that mental freak out and back into the physical world where most likely you're safe. Most of us are safe most of the time, but our bodies and our nervous system, especially if we have something like PTSD or CPTSD or any other trauma, our bodies can bring us into this state of fight or flight as though we are unsafe when actually we are safe. So those physical grounding techniques, in addition to the controlled breathing, are really great for bringing you out of that mental freak out and back into the presence of what is probably a safe environment. And if it turns out that you're not in a safe environment, it's time to leave. But most of us are safe most of the time. So physical grounding techniques. We had someone come to our support group that talked about keeping a lemon in the freezer, and he would get the lemon out of the freezer and think about how cold it felt on his hands, and think about how bright the yellow of the skin was. Think about the texture of the skin. Think about the smell of the lemon. And yeah, his grounding technique was a frozen lemon. And I think that's fucking brilliant. But yeah, it could be like going for a walk and listening to the sounds of the birds, going for a walk and looking really close at the plants and naming all of the things that you can see. It could be petting a dog and trying to get out of the thinking mind and just relaxing our bodies, lowering our blood pressure by petting a dog or a cat. But yeah, anything that's going to be regulating for the nervous system is going to be physical grounding techniques, and different things are going to work well for different people. So this is just going to be you being the scientist again and doing experiments with yourself and being like, what actually makes me feel good? Like personally, for me, the breathing exercises work so well. Like I feel physically completely different before and after I do a yoga video, like a 20-minute yoga video. So nervous system regulation is really important. Emotional literacy is really important. And setting ourselves up for success, which the setting ourselves up for success also ties back into nervous system regulation, because it's important too, if you're freaking out, to be like, oh, am I neglecting any of my basic needs, to bring it back to that? Am I hungry and not noticing it? Am I thirsty and not noticing it? Am I lacking in sleep? Or am I not finding a balance between rest and movement? So bringing it all the way back to that when we're freaking out, like, am I meeting my basic needs? And then starting back from square one. The combination of those three skills, emotional literacy, nervous system regulation, and meeting our basic needs by setting ourselves up for success, those are the three ways we're going to be able to learn how to be comfortable with being uncomfortable. And as we practice and practice, this is like our new superpower, and it's going to make it so you can go into any situation in life and be well and do well and act in your own best interest and not freak out. So I invite people to start being grateful for opportunities to practice these things. The next time you're uncomfortable, say, oh, hello, discomfort. I'm glad you're here today, giving me something to work with to make my recovery stronger. This skill is going to make your recovery absolutely bulletproof. And I know that's true because it's what I've done in my life. And like I said, I've experienced what I would categorize as the most horrifying things that could ever possibly happen in my life. And I had no desire to drink, no desire to use, none at all. So yeah, the invitation here is to be grateful for moments of discomfort and build on them bit by bit. And as you get to learn how to tolerate being uncomfortable, slightly uncomfortable, eventually you'll be so strong that you can tolerate anything. And that's your new superpower. And I'm so happy to be able to tell you about it. And I'm really excited to see you grow and change. And if you enjoyed this episode, hit me up in the email. Let me know what you think. And go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Give us a 5-star rating, and a review would be super helpful. And of course, share this with a friend who you think needs to hear this message. And then there's also a merch store down in the description if you want to grab some Recovery Demystified swag. Any of that stuff would be so helpful. So yeah, I really appreciate y'all's time. And if you're struggling today, try something new and learn how to tolerate being uncomfortable. So really proud of y'all for trying this out. And I look forward to speaking to you in the next episode. May you be happy and free. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Recovery Demystified. If you like what you heard, share it with a friend or rate and review us so we can reach a larger audience. Recovery Demystified is produced and edited by me, Early Brunner. Stevie Pettit made our logo. Our beautiful theme music is by Logan Bragg, and our social media manager is Kaylee Bausch. We are entirely supported by your generous donations as a 501c3 nonprofit. You can find a link to donate in the description. May you be happy and free, dear listener.